Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Bradbury, thank you very much. I grew up reading the science fiction writer Ray Bradbury, and obviously Butte's a long way away from his domain. But you're the third Bradbury I've met. I've always, it's an unusual name. Anyway, I appreciate your journey through Stanford, Michigan, and all your service, both in the legal field and in government. I want to talk a little bit about impaired and distracted driving. Obviously, it's a big issue. 13,000 people died in alcohol-impaired accidents last year nationwide. In Colorado, it's 1 out of every 3 highway deaths is connected to some form of impairment. And we have a standard for impairment with alcohol, but we don't have any standards yet for people driving while high with marijuana, THC. How should DOT work with the Department of Justice and HHS to develop a science-based impairment system that we can address this with?
Well, that's a very interesting question. Thank you, Senator. As you know, just as you said, we don't have a blood test or a breath test, as I understand it, for being high on marijuana and driving. And it's a growing problem in the country. I think NHTSA has put funds in and worked with local first responders and local sheriff's offices on training for local police and sheriffs and first responders who get to a scene to assess whether a driver is high on marijuana. And it's really a physical assessment at the scene. And it's very important to have that training and capability available with our local law enforcement and first responders. So there needs to be a lot of support for that, and I believe that the Justice Department could play an important role there through justice grants, programs, and their law enforcement relationships. So that's certainly the first way I would think about assessing that. I know that there are technological solutions that are being discussed and are potentially on the horizon, and that Congress has directed the department, NHTSA in particular, to look at those options for potentially being part of a new motor vehicle. And that's something we need to take a hard look at. I'm not sure that the accuracy and reliability is yet there, but we need to continually assess the availability, the cost of that technology, the accuracy and the reliability, because that could be a solution, but it needs to be something that's accepted by the American people if you're going to talk about something that you put in a new motor vehicle.
Right. It'll take the right process to get there, to make sure that people buy into it.
I think we're closer for drunk driving, and that's something that may be on the horizon, and is very important. As you say, 13,000 drunk driving deaths a year. We've got to get that number down.
That number, just so you're clear on it, per lane miles driving, that number has plummeted over the decades. So the National Highway Transportation Safety Board has done a pretty good job on that. But 13,000 is too many. It wasn't too long ago that it was 30,000. In terms of aviation safety, we're seeing too many accidents, you're aware of that, and they're not all at major airports. I look at airports, and so much of it is the volume, and they're big enterprises. DIA in Denver International Airport is a massive enterprise. I was concerned with some of the recent formulas. Now we're going to look at birth rates in your state as a function of how some allocations of federal infrastructure investments will be made. That's concerning, but I also look at it in terms of the smaller airports, which, again, in some of the western states, we don't have that high birth rates, and we do, obviously, as certain people try to encourage that as much as possible. But we've always pursued efficiency when we look at government spending and our workforce and try to target clear goals on things like public safety. And I think in terms of our small airports, what's your sense in being able to make sure that we have the staff and the staff with the proper experience to be able to address this at a time when we're facing cutbacks? And I worry that those are in many cases, are viewed as the people that are most expendable. Is there some commitment you can give us to make sure we preserve and if anything, expand that skill base within our workforce?
I'm sorry, Senator, you're talking about staffing at airports, airport authority staffing?
Through
or
the
within
FAA. So the Air Force authorities are more autonomous, but to a certain extent, the infrastructure in those small airports is coming, in most cases, it's a blend of federal dollars and local dollars.
That's right. That's right. The grants that FAA administers for new terminals, new runways, et cetera, expansions at airports, a very sizable grant program that is administered by FAA. And certainly we need the staff at FAA to administer the program effectively. And I think as we look at achieving greater efficiencies, doing more with less at the Department of Transportation, it's incumbent on the Secretary, and I will help him in this regard, to ensure that those cuts are done in a way that preserves our capability. We have the adequate staff to administer the programs that by law we need to administer. And those are important ones.
I appreciate that, and making sure we have the adequate staff, I think, is the key word there. I yield back to Mr. Chair.